Welcome back to a new episode of Podcast on the Brink. It's Thursday morning, August 7th. Indiana victorious on Wednesday night in its exhibition opener down in Puerto Rico. Josh Pos of Inside the Hall is on the scene for us. It's going to be your first introduction to Josh here on Podcast on the Brink. But if you've been following the site for the last month or so, been writing some football content and getting going strong now with basketball as well. Really happy to have Josh part of the team. Also happy to have him down in Puerto Rico. Before we get to the show, just want to ask those of you watching on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps us grow our audience there over on YouTube. And those listening on the audio only feed, whether it be on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating, 5-star rating preferably, and a review. We really appreciate that. Josh, it was not a close game, obviously, last night, but second look, we can count the open practice that we were at a couple weeks ago. But first look in terms of game action for Indiana basketball on Wednesday night. What were your impressions from the game and just big picture takeaways?
I think it started right. First of all, I'm Josh. Nice to meet everybody. I'm glad to be on Inside the Hall this year. I'm a senior. But my first impression was right when we got to the stadium, Alex. It was full warm-ups from the get-go. Usually last year we saw just shooting around until about the 45-minute mark. No, there were drills going on all the way up until Indiana went back to their bench with about a minute left on the clock. So that was a start right there. You could feel something new was there. And then the game, there was just an intensity despite playing what I believe people call the equivalent of an NAIA team. The intensity from the jump, from not only the starters, but the guys that came off the bench. Big picture, the score didn't matter in this game. It was what you saw from individual players and how they came together as a team. And I really liked what I saw. Obviously, it was August 6th, so it's going to be hard to make any predictions based off an August 6th game exhibition in Puerto Rico. But overall, very good defensively and turning rebounds into fast break layups.
So obviously I only saw the video that you posted and some other video highlights that were on social media, but having kind of been on one of these trips before all the way back in 2014 up to Montreal, I can remember going to 5 different venues, I think in 6 days, watching Indiana play exhibition games. Not a lot of fans made that trip. I was thinking that there might be a stronger contingent of IU fans down at this destination because it's obviously a beach and it's the time of year where people would like to go on vacation and get away and get in the sun. Kind of similar to 2021 when they went down to the Bahamas and played a couple of games. But just from judging what I saw in the background of the videos and just the atmosphere, didn't look like there was a strong contingent of fans down there. Was that surprising at all anyway? What did you kind of expect going in, and how did that match up with reality of what you actually saw in terms of atmosphere?
I expected a little bit more, but then I realized after talking to Zach Osterman that school has started in the state of Indiana. So it's hard for people to bring their kids down for a family vacation to make it an Indiana basketball family vacation. There are a couple sprinkled in there, but it was a lot of varsity club members. There was an event for them with food and drinks, and they kind of went to the courtside seats, and then people filed behind. I think from what I could hear when a guy would score, there was a lot of cheering. There were families that came as well, made that a family vacation as well, families of players that came, but really an empty gym with the only energy coming from the Indiana players.
So you, from your vantage point, you were just a little bit elevated up in the up in the stands, like in the regular seats. Is that right?
Yes, we had regular seats and we had a regular ticket. I wish I had it on me right now.
Yeah, you were multitasking very well there. I wanted to point out to everybody, people had asked us kind of what to expect in terms of the coverage. Josh was keeping stats, which he pointed out to me before we hit record that he was upset that he missed a couple rebounds and assists, but we did get a fit. We didn't know, I think, before the game that we were going to get official stats. So I know you wanted to keep those just to kind of have an idea of something to go off when you were writing, but you were also holding your phone trying to get as many video clips as possible, in addition to posting updates on social media. So good job there. I wanted to get just some of your thoughts on players. Obviously, I want to caveat all of this with this was August 6th. This was an exhibition game. This was an clearly overmatched opponent. But I think we can at least glean some observations from just what you saw in terms of players and maybe some style of play things in terms of how things were running offensive and defensively. But I want to start with Trent Sisley, who you wrote about for this morning on Inside the Hall. Obviously, Trent's a name that a lot of people are familiar with because he was recruited for quite a long time by the previous coaching staff, signed with Indiana under Mike Woodson. The coaching change happens. He is solid as you can be with the program. Sticks it out. Is obviously now a freshman on campus. Spent last season at Montverde Academy down in Florida after playing his first 3 years at Heritage Hills. And I think just from talking to Trent in the spring, really used that year down in Florida as a development year in terms of getting an opportunity to work in an atmosphere that's much more college-like than what he would have had back at Heritage Hills and play against the national schedule. They traveled around the country, played a lot of great teams, and while his stats didn't jump off, the paper when you looked at him from his senior season, definitely showed some growth. Shot the three ball really well his last year of high school, and it looks like that translated to last night's game where he went 3 for 3 from deep, but started a little bit slow. But once he got into the swing of things, played really well. Was Indiana's leading scorer last night. Got to talk to the media. Don't see that very often for a freshman in their first college action. So just your thoughts on Trent, how he looked, and obviously I don't want to look into projections in terms of how much he played, but did he look the part of a guy that can maybe help Indiana this season?
He not only looked the part of a guy that could help Indiana this season, he could be a guy that leads Indiana at some point, maybe not the entire season. And again, it's August 7th as we record this right now, but he got off to that slow start, but then hit that first layup off a great feed. And then the next possession after a defensive stop, a right wing three, didn't even graze the rim. And it was game on from there. I think he came out late in that first half, and then in the second half, he exploded. I think it was 16 second half points. He made both of his threes, 6 of 9 from twos. He was 75% overall. He had the most field goals, and he didn't just dominate offensively. He was a presence defensively, and it's hard to be the four at his size in the Big Ten play in college basketball. He had no issue with it against this team that probably didn't have a guy that was over 6'4". So Indiana's bigs had everything going for them, but Trent Sisley sharing the ball, rebounding the basketball defensively, and most importantly, offensive explosion in game one. And Darren DeVries said that's a pretty high bar he set, but it's good to have confidence for the freshman.
As far as Lamar Wilkerson goes, I didn't pay too much attention in terms of his final stat line. I looked more at the fact that the amount of attempts that he got up, which was, I think, over 10. I think maybe he took, I don't have it right in front of me. Let's see, 13 threes. So he was 3 for 13 on threes. I don't think we've ever, in the last 8 seasons of Indiana basketball, seen a player take 13 threes in a game. I'm not saying that's what he's going to do on a regular basis, but I can see him getting up 7 or 8 a game pretty regularly. Didn't obviously make the percentage that he would like to, but just what were your thoughts on Lamar, seeing him last night live and going up and down? And we know he's a talented scorer. We know there was a reason that a lot of schools wanted him. Indiana was fortunate to get his commitment back in the spring, but seems like he's going to be a big piece of the puzzle this season for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, he was trying to shoot himself out of this slump early on and was putting up good shots, but not the right shot in a Darren DeVries offense. But what led me to be excited about Lamar was his defensive intensity despite his shooting. It never wavered. So when Wilkerson, he was on the floor with Connerway and Enright, there was never a point where the opponent's guard was not harassed by one of the three of them. And it was really impressive to see that the offensive struggles didn't bleed over onto the defensive end. So Darren DeVries said, I'd love for him to shoot 20 shots a game. If he goes 2 of 20, I'm all right with it, because the next game he might most likely will go 18 of 20. So I think that his defensive intensity kept him afloat despite a 3 of 13 performance, and he only shot 1 2-point field goal. He's 0 for 1.
Peyton Connerway, I know you were messaging me a little bit throughout the game, was someone I think that impressed you. You know, I watched a lot of film on him back in the spring, and he really just stood out as a guy that can control the game really on both ends in terms of how he facilitates, but also defensively kind of spearheading things in terms of ball pressure. Again, can't take a lot out of a game where Indiana wins by 51 points, but with Peyton Connerway, I know you were impressed with some things. What stood out with him, and what makes him somebody that Indiana fans should be excited about heading into the season?
Well, first of all, his 3-point shooting has increased significantly over the summer. He's said he's been working really hard on it. He was 3 for 3 yesterday, and 1 for 1. He made his lone 3. I was thinking of Trent Sisley. I apologize. But his defensive effort on every single play, Indiana was up by 20 at one point, and there was not an inch of room. I said it last week when we were watching the practice to someone. He might be in the running for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. There is not a lack of effort at all. There's diving for loose balls. There was going into the stands for a loose ball, diving on the floor, and it was just an all-around effort. He played 21 minutes, and I was impressed every single step of the way.
Another guy that didn't shoot particularly well, but kind of stuffed the stat sheet. Tucker DeVries plays 20 minutes, obviously coming off of a season-ending injury a year ago, scores 9 points, but 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, kind of did a little bit of everything. I mean, and that shouldn't necessarily be surprising. 2-time player of the year in the Missouri Valley Conference. You look at his rebounding and assist numbers when he was at Drake, they were always pretty strong. And I think on this Indiana team, he's going to have to do a little bit of everything. We know that the front court isn't going to be overwhelming in terms of size. He's going to have to be a guy that rebounds the ball effectively, but the thing I like there is the assist numbers, because that tells me, you know, he's looked at as a guy that can go out and score 25 in a game, but when he's being unselfish and moving the ball, I think for Indiana that's a really good sign, and that's just the kind of player I think from watching Tucker, you know, a little bit last year at West Virginia, and then obviously going back to his days at Drake, he was a kind of a household name in college basketball. People knew him as one of the best mid-major players, but his versatility in terms of not just being able to shoot, but also facilitate with others has to be something that should be a positive as Indiana prepares for its first season under Darren DeVries.
Yeah, like you said, it didn't jump out on the stat sheet, but the way he played and his defense, I'm just going to keep harping on defense, but everything was spilling over. He was great in transition. I think there was 3 alley-oops that he threw. I think Indiana converted on 3 of 4 alley-oops. One was Peyton Connerway throwing one off the backboard for Sam Alexis, who wasn't ready for it. All-around funny moment. He missed it, got it back. But DeVries is great in transition. He might not look the part as a guy that can really push the pace just with his size and his build. But as soon as Indiana got on transition, it was Tucker DeVries that was leading the charge and trying to get his teammates open. It was the extra pass. He was driving to the lane and a kick out to someone in the corner for an open 3. Lamar Wilkerson usually would make that shot, didn't yesterday, but it was really impressive to see the ball movement led by DeVries to get an open look. Could go for the layup sometime, but with the open guy in the corner, especially in an exhibition game, you want to test things out.
A lot of times in a game like this, players will revert to maybe some bad habits and kind of it'll turn into kind of like a pickup game where, you know, things are just happening and it's clear that the other team can't stop them. So, you know, maybe it's easy to take the chance and take a bad shot or something like that. Was Indiana pretty focused and kind of organized throughout the game, or was there any point where it got to be kind of I don't want to call it an NBA All-Star game exhibition type up and down, but was Indiana continuing to run its offense and staying organized throughout the game?
Up until about the 6-minute mark of the fourth quarter, Indiana was running sets the entire time. They were slowing it down, mostly in the second half. The first quarter was a bit competitive, nothing out of the ordinary for a game like this, but they went into sets, and UCB went into a zone, like a ball press. It's not going to be the best one ever, and Indiana broke it at ease. But they really tried to run their stuff. Their out-of-bounds set were baseline out-of-bounds sets were set plays. They weren't just trying to find – there was two guys wide open under the basket. They still ran the play. That last 7 minutes, it was rough to watch. I am not going to lie. There were guys that should not have been on the floor together, and I'm not talking Indiana players. It got ugly at times.
Is it just the other team in terms of who they had out there? It was just a complete mismatch. I mean, obviously it's a 51-point game. I'm just is it from the standpoint of they just had no business being on the court with Indiana?
Yeah, it was like NAIA bench players against Trent Sisley and Indiana's depth players. It wasn't like there was walk-ons on the floor. Ian Stevens saw the floor in the fourth quarter, but it was a complete mismatch.
What about Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis? Obviously, both of those guys had some strong stats, some strong games, and you can't really tell a lot. You mentioned that they didn't have much size, so we don't know how this is going to translate. We're going to get a better idea of that against coming into the weekend games against the Serbia team on Saturday and again on Monday. I think that'll be a better test of what the front court looked like. But it seemed like Sam Alexis and Reed Bailey both played pretty well in their first time in an IU uniform.
Yeah, Sam Alexis, a lot of his looks were just open dump offs for a dunk, but he was rebounding the basketball. He was boxing out. It was an impressive sight to see. But as for Reed Bailey, I was thoroughly impressed with the way he started the second and the third quarter. He can not only get a rebound, but if there's no one open for an outlet, he's willing to take the ball up the court himself. And last year we saw it with Malik Renew. It is a complete 180. There's actual ball handling skills, and he's comfortable taking it. He went coast to coast off of a rebound, dished it off, drew a foul. And it was very nice to see a positionless when he was on the floor, positionless offense when Reed Bailey was on the floor. He was out. He didn't shoot a three, didn't attempt a three, so you don't really have anything there. But he was active for 94 feet, and it was impressive to me to see a guy with size not just take advantage of the size against a team like this. He was working out what he needed to work on and got 10 points and 8 rebounds. So I was impressed with him.
In terms of some of the other guys, just quickly going through, Josiah Miles didn't seem like he shot the ball particularly well last night. Struggled a bit with that. Connor Enright started, played 17 minutes, only scored 2 points, but we know in terms of stats, Darren DeVries talked a little bit about that. He might not be a guy that the stats ever jump out, but the little things, the intangibles that he brings are always going to be part of the deal with him. And then Josh Harris played, he gets a double-double in 15 minutes, 13 points, 10 rebounds. Kind of look at him right now as one of the guys maybe a little bit lower down in the rotation when you look at the depth chart, but I think it's a good thing for him to get those minutes and play well. And then Alexa Ristich gets some minutes. We didn't know for sure as of last week if he was going to even be on this trip. He gets in to Bloomington late last week, scores 6 points, goes 3 of 6 from the field. Just kind of touching on each of those guys a little bit in terms of what you saw. You can start with Miles, and then if you need a reminder on any of the guys, I know I threw 4 guys at you there, but hopefully we can just get a brief rundown on the 4 of those guys and what you saw.
Yeah, Josiah Miles had his struggles yesterday, not only on offense but defense. The coaching staff was imploring him get in the gap. That was the big thing at practice last week, is getting in the gap. And they were really yelling at Josh Harris for the majority of last week's practice that we saw. But Josiah Miles it seemed a little bit disjointed out there in his first game and just couldn't get anything going. got an easy bucket late to be the last of the players to score. I think all 11 scored for Indiana. As for Connor Enright, looking at a stat sheet doesn't really do anything for me when it comes to him. I've seen him play for multiple years now, dating back to high school, and it's not going to be a stat sheet filling night every single night for him. He'll have those games. I think the 0 of 2 from 3, he's taking 2 to 4 threes per game would be fine in a Darren DeVries offense. He decided to avoid going for a layup at one point. It was wide open layup, went for the 3, as you do in an exhibition game. But he's going to be someone that does all the intangibles in a game against a competitive team. It's really hard to get going in that aspect as that kind of player, as a glue guy kind of player against a team in August from Puerto Rico. Josh Harris, I think, is the next name that you mentioned, correct? All right. It was one of those games where I think 85% of those, 90% of those points and rebounds came in the second half, but he was using his size to his advantage in getting buckets and was a fairly efficient 6 of 9 from the field with those 10 rebounds, 1 of 2 Hoosiers with a double-double. Like you said, probably lower on the depth chart, but a confidence boost, kind of like Trent Sisley. And then Ristich, we had no idea if he was going to play. He's wearing the number 21, even though on the roster his jersey is number 13. That's how new he is to the team. But he was pretty good. He didn't really jump out necessarily in his nearly 17 minutes on the floor, but just being there, watching him warm up. I know I accidentally posted a video of him missing a layup, and you win some, you lose some, but his warm-up routine, I don't know if I've seen that many threes made in a row. So there is potential. And another thing, go back to the warm-ups. Those weren't open looks that they were taking. They were contested. There was a big emphasis on contested threes during warm-ups instead of just shooting around just to shoot.
The other thing I noticed that was from one of the videos that you put in the highlights, which you don't usually see video of the bench in a highlight reel, but I thought it was interesting that you put that in there. There was obviously a reason you did in terms of the fact that this was, I don't know how many people were there, a couple hundred maybe? Is that if that?
If that, yeah.
Okay. So you're playing a game on August 6th that doesn't count for anything in Puerto Rico in front of less than a couple hundred people. You're beating this team pretty convincingly in the fourth quarter, and the benches, or I don't know exactly when that clip was. It seemed to be in the second half. The bench was up cheering everything. Was that like a consistent thing in terms of the energy? I mean, that's what we saw in the open practice last week. It was basically from the minute those guys came into the gym, it was clapping. It was everyone in constant movement. Everyone had a role. Everyone was doing something. And when I saw the video that you showed last night of the bench, that's instantly what popped into my mind. There was nobody sitting down. They were all cheering. They were all engaged. And to me, that's kind of how things need to be in terms of this team, because they're not going to go out there and win every game just based on the talent. There's not a ton of NBA guys on this team, but in terms of the camaraderie and the energy and the togetherness that they showed, to me, that's a good sign that the bench is interacting that way in a game that really means nothing in early August.
Yeah, it wasn't the entire game that they were standing, but everything good that would happen to Made Basket, there was energy, not only from the players, but the coaching staff. They were really trying to push energy and the camaraderie. You saw it in that video that Indiana posted. I think that was Tuesday when they were touring around Old San Juan. I was talking with someone. This team is so tight-knit already here in August, and this trip was meant for them to all get together and become a unit. And then from those last 8 weeks of practice that we've heard about to yesterday's game, you could see that this team was closer than teams in years past. And like you said, they're not going to win based off talent alone. It's going to be willing themselves to victories, willing each other to victory. But that video I posted because it was a 45-point game at the time. It was in the fourth quarter. You had bench players in, you had a walk-on in, and every single starter, including the guys that were also on the bench, were standing up and doing defense chants for their teammates. And that's a very good sign because it's so easy, especially on a vacation trip, to just start getting squirrely and looking around and talking on the bench to each other. But there was a focus the entire time. And then I think I posted it in the highlights as well, a defensive play made in the first half where the entire bench got up and it felt like they were all going to go pick the guy up. I can't remember who got knocked over, but there was a sense of urgency and a sense of togetherness in game one of this group.
So what's the schedule for the rest of the week? Obviously, there's games on Saturday and Monday. What do Indiana fans have to look forward to just in terms of the rest of this trip? I think is your expectation the competition levels should step up over the weekend, and we should maybe get a better sense of what we're looking at in terms of this Indiana basketball team?
We will get a good test of what we will see. I think Saturday's game will be the better test rather than an 11 a.m. Monday game with a flight coming out against Serbian professional team. Mega Superbet is.
Yep. They're playing them 2 in a row. And again,
yes.
When you're playing a team twice in a couple of days, who knows what happens on the second day. I agree with you. The Saturday night contest seems like it'll be the one where there will be more energy, maybe, and more. And it's in the bigger arena, I believe, too. The one that's more in San Juan.
Yes, it is in Roberto Clemente,
yeah.
I believe. But the only issue is that there is a Bad Bunny concert. He has a residency here in San Juan, so might not have the crowd. Just given that probably whatever that place holds where he's going is going to be filled. I won't be there. I don't listen to Bad Bunny music, but there's a sense of, all right, got this game out of the way. Now let's have a litmus test against a professional team with actual big guys. You're going to see some big dudes out there, the big European guys, which you might see in a game against Illinois and Champaign in January. So It's going to be a test to see, will this lack of size hurt Indiana, or will they be able to run a big team out of the gym with their speed?
Well, we'll look forward to your coverage, and we'll obviously get you back here on the podcast at some point over the weekend or early next week to talk about that. What do you have planned just in terms of getting out and sightseeing, maybe seeing some things around town? What have you had a chance to experience so far?
We went around Old San Juan yesterday, and that was a really cool area. I've never been out to Puerto Rico before, so it was cool being a tourist again. I don't usually play tourist. I don't like playing tourists, but I feel like I have to. Might go back down there or over there.
Was that just a walk for you guys, or?
It was an Uber. Could have been a walk, but a little bit of a time crunch on a game day. But there's a shuttle that goes to the beach. There's no doubt I'll be playing in Atlantic Ocean waves at some point.
Good.
Hopefully not by myself. That'd be a little strange. But if I have to, I will. But I'm excited to see the food play here in San Juan. I've heard a lot about it. Caribbean-style food, plantains, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a dangerous week.
Well, we're looking forward to it, Josh. We're thrilled to have you as a part of the team. Glad you were able to make the trip down there. I know everyone appreciates your coverage and all the multitasking you did on Wednesday night. You only got to do it for 2 more games, so no pressure to keep that up. And again, make sure if you're not following Josh on social media, you go ahead and do that. Read all of our coverage on Inside the Hall. Josh has a story up this morning about Trent Sisley. I did a recap, a quick recap last night. There's highlights, there's press conference video. There's even another post that kind of has a rundown of every player's stats. So make sure you check that out. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks Josh again for waking up early and coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody as always for listening. As we mentioned at the top of the show, please leave us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. That helps us when people are searching for IU basketball content. The more followers, more subscribers we have, the better chance that we kind of are the first search result that people find. So it doesn't take long for you to do that, and really helps us grow the show and continue to produce these podcasts and bring them to you. So thanks for doing that, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Podcast on the Brink.